Hello, hello!
Hey, hey!
Welcome back to another episode of ISBN-Depth. If you're listening to this podcast, just know that we, your librarians, are probably worn out from putting on the second annual Sevier County Heritage Day. We're speaking from the past to the future, but we're going to be tired.
Yes, we will.
This year's theme was Christmas in Appalachia, and we hope to have seen you there, but if we didn't see you there, you get to celebrate a little bit of the magic with us. We've got the trees, we've got some books, and we're going to be talking about Appalachian books after we get done with our housekeeping. So
Yes. So to kind of go ahead and get into that, our closings this month, all branches will be closed for Veterans Day, which is November 10th and 11th. All branches will be closed for Thanksgiving holiday, November 23rd through the 25th. And then all branches will also be closing early on December 7th for our staff holiday celebration.
And then we'll get to you about the New Year's closings in the December's episode. So the Find Drive, we're having one during November. It's going to be the Food for Finds, so you'll bring 2 non-perishable canned items, 2 dried foods, 2 jars of peanut butter, or a combination. Just remember, it only excuses late fees, not lost or damaged items.
Also, our ongoing programs, just as a reminder, Show Us Your Southern Grandma, Duck It All Kodak Building Fundraiser, Veterans Tile for KFL's Tile Wall, and then also the Veterans Paver for the Kodak Building.
And those are, if you donate for those are like 2 separate funds.
Yes.
The Kodak Paver, I think you'll get like a form to fill out where you'll put in your loved one's name.
And it's $100.
Yeah. And then the KFL tile wall, it's already created. We just need to get the money, and then they'll put it up on the tile wall. So we've got some events going on. KFL, we're going to have the Small Business Sampler, which is going to be on Saturday, November 18th from 10 to 2. We had a bonus episode that should be up on YouTube with Miss Jessica and Miss Karen from Seymour. And we're really excited. I hope I work that day so I can buy some hot chocolate bombs and things like that.
Yeah, I specifically am off and will definitely be coming, so I'm excited.
And then November 28th, which is a Tuesday, we have Bright Star Theater presents a live performance of real-life Legends of Cherokee. It's going to be at 6 p.m., and I work that day, so I'm going to have to hover outside the door and be like, good job! Yeah. But it's best for grades 4th through adult, so maybe your littles probably won't get it the best, but everybody's welcome. And then December 9th from 9:30 to 11 is Pancakes with Santa, and it's going to be here at King Family Library. That's also on a Saturday. This is one of the few events that we require money for, and it's like $3, which isn't terrible.
No,
but,
it's great.
But yeah, it's one of the few that we require money for, so keep that in mind. And you don't have to sign up for any of these as far as you just show up. We've got the vendors already for the business sampler and the theater group scheduled, and so I don't think they cap Pancakes at Santa.
So just gonna move on a little bit and talk about Seymour. Just as a reminder, they do have their new Habit program, which started just a couple months ago. They meet monthly on the 2nd and 3rd Fridays each month. But for November, they're going to only meet on the 17th.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Because we have the closings. And the Habit program, in case you've forgotten or never heard of it, it's like when you bring a little, usually it's a dog, and they bring them in, and kids read to them because dogs are non-judgmental, and you can do your times tables, which I should probably practice, and all kinds of things. And of course the kids just love wallering on the dogs, especially Chrissy here.
Always super sweet and loving, and love to be toted around sometimes, and yeah.
Nothing for Kodak. They've got their fundraisers still going on. So November is International Games Month. You can celebrate that by checking out a video game behind Reference Desk at KFL.
Just as a reminder, too, we've got PS4, Xbox One, and then Switch, Nintendo Switch. So,
although we have also one Xbox Series X game, because I remember putting that in. It's one of those hybrid; it can go on both.
Oh, okay.
I think, but I know for sure there's an Xbox Series X because I was like, oh crap. And then also we've got after-school game activities, both in the Teen Center and in the Children's Center. Seymour has a chess club. Seth has on Fridays the Minecraft challenges and stuff like that for kids to do. And all the branches usually have a little something going on, but I don't know if they have anything specific. Oh, and And Ben has his after-school D&D for tabletop, and we're also always looking to try to get an adult group started. We just need enough interest and to set a time and a date. So it's hard. Yeah, it's adults scheduling their lives. It's not very easy, but we're always waiting to hear about that.
Yeah. So November is Picture Book Month. So what better way to celebrate than by taking your child to story time at one of our branches? I want to specifically talk about King Family Library because we did add a new story time day in September. It's when it started, but just kind of as a reminder because that one has been kind of slow getting picked up. Wednesday is our baby rhyme time, and that is going to be in the morning from 9:30 to 10. And then shortly after is the toddler story time from 11 to 12. I see a lot of parents bring in both of their children, maybe baby and toddler. They'll come in for the 9:30, stay until 10, and then leave for about an hour. And then come back from 11 to 12, but they're more than welcome to stay the entire time. It's super cute and fun. And then Thursday is preschool story time from 11 to 12. So the week of November 6th is Cat in the Mail Truck, which is a super cute book. Come on down and see what story time's all about. It's super fun.
And if you can't make the story time, you can always check out picture books and go read them at home with the kids.
Absolutely.
I wish my parents did that for me. All right, so we got through that pretty quick.
We did, actually.
Yeah, so Appalachian books. Fun fact about Sam, I went to Berea College up in Kentucky, and they had it's very big on Appalachia as a culture. And I think that's sort of where I kind of got introduced to the idea of being Appalachian. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really something we talked about. We got the Smoky Mountains, but I'd never have had that be I can identify as Appalachian. And I kind of warmed up to the idea. I liked it in college. I would have been a perpetual student if I could, just keep taking all the classes always. So if I could redo college over, I wish I would have taken some Appalachian courses.
Yeah, I definitely think I would like to know a little bit more about it, socioeconomic issues and all of that. And I know you're going to get into it a little bit later, but yeah.
So let's see. Oh, I should have wrote down the statistics for Appalachia, how many counties and where. But yeah, it spans a lot larger than you think it does.
Yes,
it goes up towards New York and a little bit into Ohio, and it goes down past Tennessee, I think, into Georgia. Mm-hmm. So it's the Appalachian region's very big, and it's very diverse too, which is what the book I was reading gets into. So a few years back around the 2016 presidential election, this book called Hillbilly Elegy came out, mm-hmm. and everybody was really reading it, which I was in college during the time, so I actually didn't hear much about it, and when I did, it was on my friends' Facebook groups, and they were
it's considered a memoir, right?
Yeah, it's his personal memoir, and I'll let you talk about a little bit about that just when you get to it, because that's what Alexis read was Hillbilly Elegy, and I ended up reading What You're Getting Wrong About Appalachia, which is in response to Hillbilly Elegy, and that was the kind of stuff I saw on my friend's Facebook page. They were like, this isn't a good book if you want to know what Appalachia is.
Right.
And so it's written by, I'm guessing it's C-A-T-T-E. We don't have the book physically at the library. I was reading it through Libby. And I wouldn't say it's probably the easiest book to read. I had to put on my college girl britches and actually think while I read it, and I had to read passages a couple of times. It's very much written like something I would read in my my college history classes. So it's probably not the best introductory into Appalachia, but I'll kind of give you the gist. I did have to do a citation from Wikipedia because I didn't read Vance's book, so I pulled someone's review. Let's see here. So Vance is criticized for blaming hillbilly culture and its supposed encouragement of social rot. Comparatively, he feels economic insecurity plays a much lesser role. His resentment of those who seem to profit from the poor behavior while he struggled. So, an aside, he talks about welfare queens, mm-hmm. and people having phones while he's struggling working at a grocery store. And then it combines his values of personal responsibility and tough love, and it represented a microcosm of the reason of Appalachia's overall political swing from Democrat to strong Republican affiliations. So Katie's book talks about the historic moment of outsiders describing for what Appalachia is. It's always somebody from another region defining us, not people from Appalachia defining ourselves. So her book starts most recently with the Trump election and how a lot of people are finger pointing. Well, that's the reason Trump won, was because of Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're they're white, they're racist, they're small-minded, and but even though these are harming stereotypes and stuff, they didn't just come about in 2016. It's part of a larger narrative that spans dating back to the Civil War. And it's this idea of Appalachia as being like a separate or other entity, that we're not like the rest of America. We are different. And there's myths for the difference, like it's because, oh, we have Scots-Irish heritage. Yeah, but no, we're not predominantly Scots-Irish. That was another myth kind of pulled back around the Civil War. We have Latino people, we have black people, we have people of all kinds of gender identities. They've always been around. It wasn't just white people in the mines. It was people of color suffering just along us. But anytime anybody came to document or put Appalachia on the big screen or on the pages, they always focused on white people who were impoverished. And yeah, a lot of Appalachia's impoverished, but it's more of economic things versus Vance's opinion of you just not pulling your bootstraps tight enough. Like, there's only so
Right.
tight you can pull them and still not
Exactly.
make rent. So
Well, I think that it's easy for him to sort of make, this is obviously his opinion
Mhm.
and his experience, but I guess our point is that there's so much to Appalachia. There are so many different regions. Obviously, we here are a lot different than like the Kentucky coal miners and people like that. We have different experiences, different lived experiences, so it can be harmful when you kind of typecast.
And that's and it's not just Vance. It's been since the Civil
Yes,
War.
yeah.
And again, there's a real push for it in the 1960s with the war on poverty
Mhm.
that ultimately failed. It's where who was it? JFK, yeah, was going around, and then of course he gets assassinated. So I think who's after JFK? Johnson picks up for him. But JFK did his tour through Appalachia. No other president or presidential candidate had bothered up to that time. So he came through and he saw the poverty of Appalachia. He's like, we're going to make this a focus. But it was also to kind of look away from the racial stuff going on in the 1960s. They're like, look, white people are poor too. It's not just it's white people. Come on, let's focus on it. So we again became, I think at one point in time I read in the book, the association between we're basically another Africa, a third world country.
An agenda.
We're a third world
party
country
to-
within the United States, and so the role on poverty was supposed to alleviate that, and it didn't. And it's not necessarily people's fault. It was people mismanaging the money, using it for political purposes. And I mean, I this is me picking up from Kate's research and her. I unfortunately have not read enough about Appalachia to be like, yeah, I agree or I disagree. This is just what she was saying. So it's always these outside forces defining Appalachia. That people come in and take photographs and they put it on, in the newspapers, and they're trying to get the white middle class to be like, look, let's save the poor Appalachian person, the backwards Appalachian person, the person that needs to be converted and stuff. Especially
Well,
during
and
the
I
Civil War.
even like in my time living here have sensed that sense of them being the other, like the poor, white person that
like the
lives
white
in-
trash and the rednecks.
Exactly.
and-
Like I've heard comments like, "Oh, they're from up in the mountains,"
Yeah.
that type of thing. So
Yeah,
it's
or they're-
definitely still predominant, especially even in Appalachia, and here we are.
Yeah, so, and her thing is like, Appalachian people left out of the narrative, and she argues that we aren't helpless, we aren't backwards, and a lot of things like narratives leave out active participants in social change, like the Blair Mountain labor uprising. That was where coal miners got fed up of their companies beating them down and making them live in these coal towns, and they couldn't afford to live, couldn't afford to get out, and then they were basically like martial lawed, and then they finally went, no, screw it, we're fighting back. And it was funny because Virginia, I think in the 1970s or 80s, where they were kind of compiling a state history, and they were trying to leave that out of the history that Blair Mountain had happened.
Interesting.
And Blair Mountain happened in 1920. So it might have been actually in the 60s they were trying to compile Anyway, or there's people that run Apple Shop in Kentucky. Have you ever heard of Apple Shop?
Mm-mm.
I heard about it first in college, and it was because I worked in the archives with Harry, and we did sound archives and interviews and things like that. And he had heard about Apple Shop, and he told me about it. It's located in Kentucky, and what they do is it started out as a radio show, but they pass messages on to people in prison who can't afford to like meet, either prison's expensive. Like to talk to someone on the phone, you got to pay so much money per minute, and of course the inmates don't make money, so you have to put it on there. And if you don't have money, you can't. And then it costs money to send letters, and it takes time out of your day if you want to go visit. And there's also hoops and stuff you have to jump through. So they started broadcasting inmates' messages for people and their families and it grew into something so much bigger. And because the idea of Appalachia being poor, impoverished, drug addicted, it's everywhere in the United States.
Right.
It's not just, and then that Apple Shop network helps do other prisons and things like that.
Well, and like you say, it's everywhere in the United States, and it's sad because there's such a rich history that really should be what is highlighted versus, obviously there is poverty, but also there's, this beautiful, tight-knit family sort of culture that I think doesn't always get highlighted, so.
Yeah, or if it does, it's more in like the backwards way of like, they're not going to let anybody in, they're not going to let any change in
Yes.
there.
Like, oh, bless their heart, like they'll never change.
Bless their heart. The Hatfields boys, which was another thing, they were brought up to like the popular international level because it was convenient to be like, look at these rednecks, this is like the worst of the worst, and this is everywhere, and it's like, no, it's not everywhere. My only criticisms of her work, without like reading other stuff, I would have liked a little less focus on coal country, because Appalachia is coal country, but also like there's other parts that don't consider themselves coal country, and that's part of the history. And even in Berea, I kind of, when I'd hear about it, it would be coal country, and I think it's because also I was in Kentucky and there was a lot of stuff in there. And then she barely just briefly touched on this idea of brain drain, which is what I'd heard some of this too in college, where the idea is you go to another higher institution or whatever, it could be another state or in the same state or whatever, you get educated and then you leave your home because your home doesn't have opportunities for you or doesn't pay you well enough and things like that. And she touched on it a little bit, and she goes, we get sucked into this narrative that that's the only path for us. We have to leave our home to make something of ourselves instead of staying home to build it up. And then there's also, I think I mentioned to you yesterday or something, that the idea of what education means. Like we think, oh, that person's not educated because they don't use correct grammar, or they talk funny, or they don't, know the latest trends or something like that. But they're educated in other ways. They know how to roof, they know the time of the seasons to plant stuff. That's its own kind of education, and it's stuff that they know trades and things that we might not know. And so like we're overlooking those people. Is it brain drain for people who know how to make houses and things? Is it brain drain if it's a colored population and not white people? Like so I would have liked to have heard a little bit more on that.
Yeah,
the book
that's very interesting.
The book wasn't very long itself. I think maybe like 200 something pages. Like I said, it was quick to read, but it took big girl britches. I had to stop and read it and be like, am I understanding what she's telling me?
What she's saying? Yeah, that makes sense.
And I didn't for a minute, and I was like, I don't think I understand this. And then I started explaining to Linda at CERC, and I'm like, no, I do understand her topics. Thank God for college. But so yeah, it's a good book if you already have a background in Appalachian history or social movements and things like that. It might be a little harder for your everyday like layperson to jump into it, because I read a lot of fiction now, and it took some time to switch gears, and that's with me having somewhat of a background in work like this.
Yeah, and so just to kind of go off of that, it's so important. That's why it's so important that we have a history center here, where you can really get like more of an essence of who these people are.
You get their everyday people histories,
exactly,
the micro histories, not the
real people, not just the the number or the statistic or
what people say
exactly
we are.
Yeah.
So I know you read some of Hillbilly Elegy. What was your kind of impressions?
Well, and like I said, I think that it did focus a lot on the negative, and I don't know if it's because he sort of started here and left, like you said, kind of the brain drain, which I didn't really make that connection in the beginning, but I definitely see that as it's sort of like, here I am, this is what I came from, which was great, but here I'm so much better for having left, and I just don't think that's really a fair assessment, which obviously it's a memoir, so you kind of have to.
He's right in his own personal opinion.
Exactly.
But it's one of those, like, they've blown him up to explain why Trump won in 2016 or why. And so what was his, like, personal background, his family like? Was there drug addicts, alcohol?
Yes, all of the above. Very hillbilly.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So.
And I read a little bit of the reviews about it, and it's sort of like this. It's a moral failing. He's like, my parents, my family are morally wrong for not keeping a steady job and not doing this or that, or the people that have the cell phones while I don't have a cell phone, or they get government cell phone for free while I'm working for mine, like those. See, I can sympathize a little bit with them because I didn't have a good background growing up. My parents had done drugs and alcohol and traded stuff for food stamps and things and like that, and it's like, and growing up I did have that belief that it was a moral failure, and I still struggle with it a lot, that I'm like, well, why can't you get clean? Other people can get clean.
Right.
Why can't you be a good parent? But there's also the side of the coin of it's an addiction, it's a sickness, and that's not really terribly talked about in our area. It's more of the moral.
You're right.
You've screwed up. You need to go to church.
Why can't they just do better?
And why can't you? But why can't the community help? And then a lot of the times the community, we're negative against them, fighting our own. Like, is it addiction or
well,
is it moral?
in that case, you're sort of going outside of the community to get help and resources.
Yeah.
And then I guess they don't come back. So,
like, I can see his negative point, and I'm proof that it also happens today, and no matter your gender or whatever. But it's one of those, like, it's not everybody. Like, I work in a building full of wonderful people that either, like, were raised here or came and lived here, and whether you want to call yourself Appalachian or not, you're part of the Appalachian community. And I would say these people I'm around are educated, are good people, but they're not going to make the news because they're not sensational.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have no plans on leaving, so I really love this community and everything that they do, so.
Yeah. And there was a good point, too, that someone made, like, they argued, we can't argue too much, this is just personal experience, you can't argue that, but he does touch on this idea of learned helplessness, and we see it a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, with parents or stuff, like, they're like, I don't know how to use the internet because, like, you can do it for me, or why should I bother, it changes. And that itself could have been, like, a nice segue or something to look at, this predominant, and is it something our generation's learning, or is it just a certain generation? Is it with technology? But then I don't know, like, what quantifies sort of is like learned helplessness? Is it going to be technology, or is it going to be stuff like, should I bother to do my taxes, or why should I bother to buy a house? I can't afford it. Like, but then that's not necessarily the root of the issue. The root of the issue is, like, economy and policy and things like that. That's depressing the whole area, but it's also depressing the whole United States. It's depressing generations. So it's a systematic, wider problem. Like, if we want to talk about Appalachia, we should read fiction by Appalachian authors and, read their memoirs. And then, if Appalachia's a culture, what are things that define our culture? Is it chicken and dumplings? Is it silver packages? Is it things like that? So, like, you don't have the answers to these questions. You can start finding people's answers through books, especially in the non-fiction section.
Yeah,
we have a lot in the history section.
That's the point. Read widely. Read more than just,
Yeah. And, like, Vance is right. Kate's right. So, they're right in their each perspectives and things like that. So, and you can only make your own opinion. So the more you read,
the more you know.
The more you know. Reading rainbows. So, I feel like I could have had a whole college class on this. should have taken a college class on this, but shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah.
I have to teach myself now. Why do I have to be responsible for myself? Okay, so I guess that kind of
wrapped it up nicely, I think. Yeah.
So next month, when we do our December podcast, we're going to be looking at books that haven't circulated in a while.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, I think.
Yeah, maybe we'll post a list on Facebook of them that you can check out if you're like, oh, I love that book, or I've always wanted to read that back. What do you mean it hasn't checked out in 5 years? People have long TBRs.
Yeah.
I have books that I want to read and they've been on there for a while. So this is your chance to save the book, because if you read a book, and I think our current statistic is it circulates a couple of times, there's a good chance of saving it.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, if the book hasn't been checked out in 5 years and you read it once, then we're like, okay. So, it's stuff we look at. And being a librarian's not easy. We could probably talk about that in the next one, what it means to weed. And,
yeah, I think that's a great idea.
The things that we have to think about and consider.
Yeah.
So, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're throwing away knowledge, and it's like, yes, but no. We've updated the collection, hopefully, or if there's a hole in the collection, let us know. Anyway, yeah, being a librarian is not easy. Being a human being in Appalachia, serving an Appalachian community that is a diverse community, that is multi-religious, non-white, non-straight. It's difficult.
It is.
Especially when we even have to fight our own stereotypes in our heads. We don't throw books away. Ben put this underneath that spiel, big red letters that scroll across the screen. We do not throw books away. We either put the books in the bookstore where people buy them and it generates revenue back into the library, or we donate them to causes. We have free book box libraries around the community. We give them to other programs and things like that. And sometimes they wind up in the thrift store, but again, it serves them in another fashion where they can revenue to whatever charity, and people still get the books.
Exactly.
I think the only time we throw away a book is if it's a hazard, it's moldy, it's literally you cannot glue it back together. That's the only time. If it's just damaged beyond repair that you wouldn't want it in your own house, that's the only time we throw away a book.
Absolutely.
Every other book we delete or read or anything like that.
And typically, if it's well read, we'll just purchase another one.
Yeah, yeah, especially the Mo Williams is the recent one I'm thinking of.
Oh, yes,
We put his old beat up ones in the bookstore and we got some brand new ones.
And the thing is, I guess we kind of want them to be falling apart a little bit.
That's the best way for a book. That's the best way for a book to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. You can even do those little sirens like woo woo. We do not throw away books.
Yes. Okay, so until next time.
Until next time, bye-bye, and thank you, Ben. We appreciate everything you do.